Henry, thanks so much for your time. So I was just chatting to a couple of investors, and everybody says the same thing. No one saw this particular move coming. So take us back. How long has this deal been in the pipeline?
We've been contemplating this for a long period now, and the first time that we got approval from our board to explore this transaction was the 3rd of November last year. So it goes back quite some time, and it is certainly, it's not something which came to mind after Aton launched its offer on Murray & Roberts. So
well, naturally you could understand why people would assume that.
Yeah, it's certainly not the case. We believe this is in the best interest of our shareholders, of Aveng's shareholders as well, and we're going to put in a big effort to convince Aton that this is also a good deal for them. We would want them to vote to support.
I mean, I want to get to Aton, but Henry, except you sold your construction business saying that you wanted out of that space. So now you're going back in the space. So why?
No, we're not going back in.
Right.
No. Now, what we're interested in, there's 2 assets within the Aveng group that we would like to integrate with Murray & Roberts. The first is the Moelmans Group, which is an open-cast mining business, which will become part of our mining business. And the second asset is McConnell Dell, which is an Australian-based business that will be integrated with our oil and gas platform. The other assets will all be sold.
The South African construction businesses?
Yes, so Grenke LTA will be sold, Trident Steel, as well as the manufacturing businesses, and there's a portfolio of businesses.
Right. Where does this leave this Aton deal then?
Well, we think it is in the best interest of all shareholders, including Aton. Our process is independent from what Aton is doing, so we will have to get our shareholders to vote on this transaction at 2 occasions. Firstly, in a Section 126 process, and what that means is because we implementing or pursuing a transaction, whilst there is a takeover bid on Murray & Roberts in play, it could be seen as a frustrating action, but fortunately the Companies Act provide for a mechanism to have this cured, and the first point is you have to have it approved by shareholders, and secondly by the Takeover Regulation Panel. And only after you've obtained those 2 approvals, you can proceed with making an offer. We intend to call that shareholders meeting on the 19th of June.
Oh, that's pretty soon.
So it is pretty soon, and then on the basis that we would get our shareholders to vote and support, we will proceed with further exploring the transaction.
Now, what's Aton's current shareholding in Murray & Roberts, and do they have enough stake to block this deal?
They've got just short of 40%. And we required a 50% vote at our meeting. But having said that, from a commercial point of view, it is a transaction that really makes a lot of sense. And I am sure that once we've explained the merits of the transaction to them, that they would see the benefit of this and that they would vote in favour. We hope that that is the outcome.
I mean, explain to me the ABCs of the value creation you're looking at here, because Aveng, Australia business, yes, but still in a very difficult spot because of the construction landscape there. So how are you planning to create value?
I think we need to focus on, firstly, what is it that we're acquiring? Let's start off on the South African side with the Moelmans business, which is an open cast mining business. We're not in open cast mining as Murray & Roberts, so we don't have the capability. So it's a nice complementary business that we can combine with cementation in our mining platform. And as you know, the metals and minerals markets is in the early stages of a boom period, and we think the timing for this deal is very, very good to bring that combination together. We think there's going to be more value unlock in Australia with McConnell Dell, which is a business that's more focused on infrastructure work, whereas Clough is more focused on the oil and gas sector. And Australia is, again, at the beginning of a massive infrastructure boom, more so on the eastern parts of the country. And we believe that that combination is going to set us up well for that growth coming through. In oil and gas, we think it's still going to be another year or 2 before we see the benefit of the higher oil prices starting to work through in investments with new projects coming to market. So our oil and gas business, by combining that with McConnell Dell, will get the benefit of the infrastructure boom that we see happening in Australia.
So this, as I understand, is an in-principle offer. You haven't actually
Correct.
made a formal offer on the table.
No.
So when will you do that?
As I said, we cannot make an offer because of the provisions of Section 126 of the Companies Act. We first have to call the shareholders meeting, which will happen on the 19th of June. We have to get the Takeover Regulation Panel approval. We have to conclude our due diligence. And Aveng is busy with the rights offer, and they need to conclude the rights offer as well, and that will be on the 22nd of June. So we hope to make the firm offer before the end of June.
So are those the only potential regulatory hurdles that are in the way of this, or can we expect others once all those boxes are ticked?
Once those boxes have been ticked, there's a further shareholder vote required, which will happen in August of this year, and this is when the shareholders have to vote on approving the transaction. Because the Section 126 vote is not to approve the transaction, it is approval for us to proceed pursuing the opportunity whilst we're under the takeover scenario. But at the August meeting, we will get shareholders' approval to proceed and to implement, and the only regulatory approval that will then be required still is the approval from the Competition Commission, and we really don't see any problem there because there's no overlap between the Moelmans business in South Africa and your underground mining business. And in Australia, we will also have to get approval from the authorities, but there's very little overlap between Clough and McConnell Dell.
What happens if Aton tomorrow now turns around and gives you the 20 Rand or 22 Rand per share offer that you're looking for? Does this deal still stand, or will you take that?
Well, what we will have to do is we'll have to consider the status of the Aveng agreement. The 20 to 22 Rands per share was based on Marine Roberts as a standalone business, and we have to assess that again in the context of the Aveng deal. But if they prepare to up the price to 20 to 22 Rands a share, it becomes a scenario that the board will really have to think whether they're going to recommend that to shareholders or not.